A map is supposed to tell you where the world is, where one country ends, where another begins, where a coastline turns, where a river flows, where an empire claims its territory. But imagine discovering a map that governments wanted destroyed, not misplaced, not forgotten, destroyed, and then hearing an even stranger claim that 14 countries were somehow connected to its destruction. What could possibly be so dangerous about a map? A hidden civilization? A forbidden border? Evidence that an entire chapter of history was wrong? Or is the story itself hiding something? Because when you start looking through historical archives, the first discovery is not the secret on the map. It's that the story of the 14 countries doesn't hold up quite the way people tell it. There is no reliable historical record showing 14 governments joining together to burn identical copies of one mysterious map. No verified archive lists 14 nations ordered to destroy it. No surviving primary source establishes a single global map whose existence threatened the official version of history. And that should make the story less interesting. Instead, it makes it much more interesting, because governments really did destroy maps. And sometimes they had very good reasons. During the Second World War, for example, Japanese military mapping organizations produced enormous quantities of detailed maps covering territories far beyond Japan itself. Many were classified because they contained valuable geographic and military information. As the war ended, large numbers of these maps were deliberately burned, while others were confiscated by Allied forces. Researchers today study the surviving fragments because they preserve information about landscapes that later changed dramatically. So the idea of governments destroying maps is not a fantasy. But there is another historical example that makes the mystery even stranger. In Korea, a 19th century mapmaker named Kim Jong-ho became associated with the enormous Daejeonjido, one of the most remarkable maps of the Korean peninsula. Later accounts claim that Japanese colonial authorities had arrested Kim and destroyed his maps. But there was a problem. Surviving evidence contradicts parts of that story. Original woodblocks associated with the map survived, and historians have questioned whether the famous account of Kim's persecution was itself a later fabrication or distortion. In other words, sometimes a mystery isn't what a government destroyed. It's what later generations believed had been destroyed. And that distinction matters, because maps have never been neutral objects. A line on a map can become a border. A border can become a territorial claim. And a territorial claim can become a reason for war. For centuries, states have treated maps as strategic assets. Historical research on cartography shows that governments could be both protective of maps and willing to destroy them when they became obsolete, inconvenient, or dangerous. Entire collections disappeared through deliberate destruction, neglect, war, climate, and political upheaval. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union went even further. Its military maps could contain astonishingly detailed information about bridges, roads, buildings, industrial sites, and terrain. Soldiers were expected to return maps after exercises, and when the Soviet system collapsed, instructions were reportedly given to destroy or recycle large quantities of military cartography. Some survived only because individuals quietly preserved them. So what about the mysterious 14? This is where the evidence becomes important. The number appears far more convincing in modern retellings than it does in the historical record. There are certainly historical cases involving many countries, disputed maps, destroyed documents, suppressed information, and changing borders. But combining those separate events into a single story about 14 countries burning one map creates a connection the evidence does not establish. And that may be the real twist. The map wasn't necessarily dangerous because it revealed a lost civilization. It may have been dangerous because maps themselves are powerful. Consider what a map can say without writing a single sentence. This belongs to us. That belongs to them. This kingdom existed. That population lived here. This border is legitimate. That border is not. A map can turn an argument into something that looks like a fact. And once that image enters textbooks, archives, newspapers, and public memory, it can become incredibly difficult to challenge. That's why historians are cautious with mysterious maps. They don't simply ask, "What does this map show?" They ask who made it. When was it made? What sources did the cartographer use? Who paid for it? Who was supposed to see it? What changed between the original and later copies? And most importantly, what evidence proves that the map was actually destroyed? Because a missing map is not automatically a suppressed map. A damaged document is not automatically evidence of a cover-up. And a repeated story is not automatically a historical fact. That doesn't make the surviving maps less fascinating. It makes them more important. A military map burned during a retreat can preserve landscapes that no longer exist. A colonial map can reveal how an empire viewed territory it intended control. An old border map can expose competing ideas of sovereignty. And a map that historians once believed was lost can completely change the questions they ask. So perhaps the most dangerous thing about the legendary 14-country map is not what was supposedly written on it. It's the temptation to believe that history is a finished picture. It isn't. History is built from what survives. Maps survive. Archives survive. Fragments survive. But countless documents disappear through war, fire, neglect, censorship, accidents, and simple decay. And when the evidence disappears, someone eventually fills a blank space with a story. Sometimes that story is true. Sometimes it's exaggerated. And sometimes the mystery is discovering that we don't actually know, because history isn't only written in books. Sometimes it's drawn on a map, and when that map disappears, we may lose more than geography. We may lose one of the versions of the past that once existed. And perhaps that's the unsettling truth behind the story of the 14 countries. The greatest secrets of history may not be hidden on the maps we still have. They may be hiding in the maps we never got to see.